Hello, friends. Monday, November 17th here on the Wolverine.com podcast. Anthony Broom here with Clayton Safey and Chris Ballas, as we are every Monday night at 6 p.m. It's the most wonderful time of the year right now, college football, rounding into the final few weeks of the regular season. College basketball, Michigan is 3-0. We'll talk about them a little bit later. A lot to discuss today. Michigan ekes one out at Northwestern. We'll put a bow on that one. Sherrone Moore spoke to the media today ahead of Maryland week with some injury updates and just thoughts on trap games and all kinds of topics.
Don't call it a trap game.
That's we were instructed not to. Borderline finger wag. Don't do it. Don't do it. We're going to talk about it.
Is it a trap game? Is it like more of a trap game since they're like not calling it a trap game? I feel like you should like come out and be like,
Embrace
yeah, this could be a trap.
Embrace the trap. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, my thing would be, is it a trap game if you've been juggling chainsaws while like balancing on a high wire act the entire year?
That's fair too. Exactly.
Every
team, when you're not that much better than every team on your schedule, or at least hasn't played out that way, where you are going toe to toe with the Purdues and the Northwesterns of the world, you can't take anybody for granted. And people can get pissed off about us criticizing after a win. That game never should have come down to what it did on Saturday. Let's be honest. You can't have 5 turnovers in a football game. That's bad football. In a lot
Apparently
of
you can.
Yeah, you can. But at the same time, there were some good things too. And we'll talk about that as well. So we're going to break it down. And we're going to do it. We're going to be right down the middle here, folks.
What I'll say too is that I feel like over the last 5 years in particular, there have been so many like, oh, well, you can't do that. Like you can't beat Ohio State without a passing game. Oh, you can't do this without your sign stealer. Oh, you can't beat Ohio State without a quarterback or the forward pass as a threat at all. And they just keep doing things that we say you can't do. So it's weird to put it's weird to say that nothing is off limits anymore. But we will, of course, talk about this weekend's close call at the friendly confines of Wrigley Field. We will discuss the Maryland game coming up. Monday means both Dusty May and Sherrone Moore speak to the media. So we'll chat some takeaways from both of those media sessions. And then like we do every week, we will take your questions at the end of the show. And reminder, if you want to use the super chat function, that will not only move you to the front of the line in the Q&A, moves you to the front of the line in terms of what we discuss on the show. So be sure to use that if there's something pressing that you want to bring up to us. But we are brought to you tonight, of course, by our friends at HomeFieldApparel.com. Holidays are coming up. People are starting to exchange wish lists, and Michigan fans in general. You're pretty good with the gear. You're pretty good with showing off what you have. Wrigley Field on Saturday was, conservatively speaking, 75% Michigan fans, probably more than that. The streets were lined with the maize and blue faithful, and it's fun to watch Michigan fans take over. And if you need gear for a takeover, Homefield Apparel is the place to go, whether it's, bowl season is coming up. I've been talking a couple weeks about long sleeves and crew necks and jackets and hoodies. Could be a warm weather playoff game. Could be a warm weather bowl game. You might need some t-shirts too. Maybe you have to keep the sun out of your eyes or what have you. So head on over to homefieldapparel.com. Check out their phenomenal Michigan collection. They've been great partners and friends to us over the years. So a shout out to the folks down there, and we appreciate their support as they have over the last few years here. Well, as we do every Monday on the show, after a game, of course, I do the post-game show. Ballas's show with Skeen is up in the podcast feed. Would encourage you to check out both of those, especially the post-game where I almost get kicked out of the friendly confines of Wrigley Field, but
not so friendly. Yeah, geez.
It was not so friendly.
Dicks.
It is what it is. But I'm still here. I'm allowed to go back. I will be back because I love that place. But what I was working to is Clayton Safey has not yet been on the air, on the record, discussing what we saw in the Northwestern game. Clayton, I'm interested in your thoughts from what was, again, I described it as another high wire act.
Yeah, and I want to pull up this comment from Dud Doy, which is just a great name, by the way. Seems like a smart guy. He says, this game was Illinois 2022 all over again. And I had that exact conversation over the weekend where you need a game-winning kick. It's late in the year. You're trying to save your season. Back in 2022, they were trying to keep an undefeated season alive. This year, you're trying to stay alive for the college football playoff with 2 losses. You're down to former walk-on running backs. It was Isaiah Gash on the 4th down pickup against Illinois in 22. And it was Bryson Cusdahl, the pride of Ada, Michigan, from Grand Rapids, that came up big with some runs at the end of the game in this one. And then Dominic Zavada hits it out of the park, literally. What a scene at the end of the game at Wrigley Field. I mean, you don't want it to come down to that, especially with the way you kind of dominated the game when you look at the yardage totals and everything else. But the fact that they were able to get it done with a 50-yard drive at the end, Dominic Zavada, who had missed one real field goal and then the 60-yarder, which, I mean, the fact that he's even trusted to attempt that speaks to how good he is. But he hasn't been having the best year. He had missed, I think, 6 kicks coming into the game winner on the season, including 2 that day, and then he knocks it through. So, the resilience of the team has been a theme that Sherrone Moore keeps pointing to. A lot of what they are having to respond to, though, are self-inflicted wounds, including the 5 turnovers. And he mentioned it, and, I don't know who did the research or what it was, but, yeah, it is very rare to have 5 turnovers and win. SMU did it against Duke last year, 6 turnovers to Duke's 0, and SMU won by 1 point, 28-27. So it can be done, but it's probably about once a year in this sport that it happens. Michigan just so happens to be on the right side of it. But I did think we saw some good things in this game. I mean, you put up 496 yards of total offense. It's the most Michigan's had against a power conference team since doing so against Texas Christian in the college football playoff on New Year's Eve 2022. So you didn't do that when you were, on a national championship run. You didn't do it last year. You hadn't done it all season this year against a power conference team. And the defense came up with big stop after big stop at the end. They were put in terrible positions all game long on Northwestern's 5 scoring drives, 3 of which were field goals. They average a starting field position of 40 of being on the Michigan 43-yard line. So the fact that they held them, and Sherrone Moore said this today, the fact that they held them to field goals early on in the game was kind of the difference in the end once it became a tight game. So, special teams is a disaster. The offense continues to just not play to what you feel like its potential is. You see in flashes. I mean, Andrew Marsh with a great game. Bryce Underwood was having his best game until the mistakes late in the game. But the defense, I think, is getting better, and it wasn't tested all that much against a pretty bad Northwestern offense, but still, I mean, you love the way they're playing. So who knows? They're 8-2. You come out of every game thinking, what the heck did I just watch? Yet they've won 4 in a row. So I don't know. I don't know what conclusions to make. They just got to beat Maryland this week.
Yeah, and people keep asking what happened to that ball that Zavada kicked out of the stadium. It actually went on the concourse. Somebody was there we talked to afterwards, and they said it was a scramble for it. A bunch of guys diving and jumping for the ball like it was a cold beer on a hot day, right? And
a couple of those in there in years past.
What's that?
I said I had a couple of those cold beers in that building in years past. Not Saturday.
Now they cost $22 a piece. At least they're tall. But regardless, that's where somebody's got the ball. Be interesting to see who came up with it if it ever surfaces. So I think it'll be worth dozens of dollars someday for this big George Jewett game. And I'm not minimizing what they did in terms of the win. Just get the win, right? And Northwestern is a well-coached football team. They play hard. But and 496 yards, there were a lot of good things that Bryce Underwood. In fact, until that fourth quarter, or right for about 3 quarters, he was fantastic. But the 5 turnovers and 2 of the interceptions were absolutely terrible. And guys, I was thinking about this and watching the replay. They had the ball that was batted up and caught by Deacon Tonelli when he was hit. That could easily have been another turnover. He had a fumble out of bounds. I don't know if he was down or not, but the ball's loose. And then Jordan Marshall gets over the goal line by about a yard, and the ball gets loose. They better be stressing ball security this week. This is 2 games in a row now in which turnovers have been an issue. That cannot happen against Ohio State. I will say that, Anthony. I will say that they will not be able to get away with losing the turnover battle and beat Ohio State. And if they do, then I will take both of you guys out to the chop house afterwards. If they win the game and lose the turnover battle by more than 1, I will take you guys both out to a nice dinner at the chop house.
Not if they just win the game. It's only if they lose the turnover battle.
No, if they have to win the game, but lose the turnover battle by one or by more than one.
That almost feels like a staff picks criteria. It's
Yeah,
so
well,
specific.
it is what it is. Regardless, you know what? You win the game, right? And but there's a lot to not feel good about too. And but I'm sick of getting kind of sick of hearing people talk about the defense and Wink Martindale like he's some kind of a problem. They are the reason that they won this football game. They held them to a couple field goals a couple of times. They couldn't keep them out of the end zone when it was 1st and goal from the 6. That's going to happen, right? What are the odds of that? So overall, these are the guys that kept them in the game. And then the second 22 pass, if Mason Curtis maybe jumps, a half second later or times his jump just a little bit better, they're getting off the field, and this might be a runaway football game. But it's time to eliminate the ifs and the buts, guys, if you want to beat Ohio State and Maryland. Frankly, you cannot take them for granted, even though they suck.
Well, real quick, like the standard that the defense is held to, like the fact that they have to be perfect because they've had poor offense really in 2 years under Sherrone Moore. I mean, what would the Sherrone Moore era be without Wink Martindale's defense? And
Right.
I know that they struggled at times early on in year one. I know that they had a bad game at USC, and I guess that's going to happen. I mean, other teams have gone out there and had bad days as well or gone across the country. That was a terrible performance, and it shouldn't have happened, but that's the one time you can really sit here and blame them solely for the loss. Yet, how many times has the Michigan offense been bailed out in wins by the defense or been the reason why they lost games? So, I mean, Wink Martindale has done a really good job overall at Michigan. And I know they'll have a bad game and then everyone's, crying for him to get fired. And then you go weeks without hearing anyone talk about it. But then they're ready to get the pitchforks back out when something goes wrong. But man, I mean, it is a good defense, and they're without the elite talent that they had a year ago, which could hurt their chances to beat the better teams like Ohio State. But they're winning games because of this defense along the way, which you have to credit them for that. And
they were not solely responsible at USC. What, they score 13 points at USC?
Exactly. Yeah.
So
kept them in the fight there. It was 14-7 at the half.
Yeah,
could have been much worse.
And special teams sucked too, and that's obviously another issue that we need to discuss in a little bit. But overall, guys, great weekend with you fellas at the Friendly Confines. The renovations, that place no longer does smell like stale beer and pee, so I apologize. It was fantastic being there, and I really enjoyed it. We had a great time out there.
I was going to make a comment, but I'll just leave that to those.
No.
I know exactly what you're going to say.
Yeah.
No, I'm not going to do it.
I'll do it.
I'll just say not everywhere in the building doesn't smell like stale pee.
Yeah, the bathroom in the press box was a disaster. I'll come out and say it.
There you have it. So was the wall, but the wall next to me where the chair kept falling, the drywall is going to need to be repaired.
Yeah, let it be known, Chris Ballas punched a hole in the drywall in the historic Wrigley Field. It's a national landmark. Place was built in 1914, and there's a big chunk out of the wall because of.
Well, he threw a chair at the wall like Bobby Knight.
There were a lot of chunks out of the wall. The funny part is that half the press box thought I actually did that because it happened like right after a turnover or something like that. And we were packed so closely in there, the chair fell down the stairs. You could see a bunch of holes on the wall. It happened before, many times, happened twice on my watch. But you know what? Patch it up, move forward.
Yeah, I mean, whatever one of you animals, if it's anyone, I can only speak for our contingent. If it was any of you, you're a total sicko. I just come out and say that. Yeah, the defense, like when you go back and look at this game, Northwestern's output was by and large helped by penalties, 50-50 balls, which they weren't 50-50 balls. They made more plays on those that Michigan did. And the turnovers that kind of really just the turnover down to the 6, which helped them put a touchdown on the board. So defensively, I know like this offense is putting them in so many tough spots, and it's tough to make plays when you're on. Like there was so much sudden change in that fourth quarter that I think you can make the argument that was maybe their most clutch performance of the year, continuing to just get off the field. You got a true freshman out there on third down who makes a hell of a play in Jordan Young. So really just, they don't have these bona fide take over a game type of stars like Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant were against Ohio State last year. But 2 weeks from now and this Saturday too, I mean, that group is going to keep you in the fight and give you a puncher's chance. Offensively, this this is just an ink blot test of a team in general, because some people see 8-2 and go, oh my gosh, like it's a tangible improvement over last year. And look at that, your goals are still in front of you. And then some people look at it and see the points they leave on the field. The clock management continues to be an issue. We can talk about special teams right now. That unit basically doesn't exist. I mean, you played without an offense last year. You're playing with almost nothing on special teams this year, unless Hudson Hollenbeck very rarely hit, not consistently enough, hits a good punt. Dominic Zavada's missed some kicks this year. And they just haven't had answers for that. But in totality, I think the only way we can get a true evaluation of this team is to let this regular season play out. Now, we can have our biases. We can have our hunches on how we think things might go. But if/when this team wins on Saturday, and if it finds a way to beat Ohio State, it will be far less shocking than last year's win over Ohio State would be. So to me, it's still an incomplete, even if 10 weeks in, it's still the self-inflicted errors that are kind of holding this team back from being what we think they can be.
It'll be the most talented team, maybe other than Texas, that Ohio State has played all year. They didn't look like world beaters. That was the first game of the year, right? They're going to be facing a Michigan team that has a lot of talent on defense, that has more speed than they've seen. You're going to have a first-year quarterback. We're getting ahead of ourselves. We'll talk about that game. But first things first, Maryland, right? And you got to take care of business. It's a road game. Maryland's lost, 6 games in a row. So, but there's no excuse to lose that game. Just like there would have been no excuse to lose that Northwestern game, guys. If they had lost that game because of 5 turnovers, you'd be looking at it and saying, how do you double them up and yardage and do all this good stuff and still lose the football game? It's because the attention to detail is still lacking. Some of the stuff, the jumping off sides on 3rd and short, that's had to have happened, five times this year now, I think, something like that. You can't give up free first downs in football games. I don't care who you're playing. So they did that again. But the special teams, Anthony, to your point, right? I loved seeing Andrew Marsh back there finally. We've been calling for it all year. They didn't want to do it because they don't want to put their stud back there, right? But at the same time, this is an area that Michigan's always done this, and a lot of teams have always done this, right? Where you put a guy back there to be a game changer. Ted Ginn, Ohio State. We can go Charles Woodson. We can go Desmond Howard. We can go. Everybody's going to say Ronnie. Well, what about Ronnie Bell? He blew out his knee. He blew out his knee on a non-contact injury, planting his foot. Could have been just the same as if he had been catching the ball and running with it. So you've got to find ways to really supplement your offense with special teams here. And so I like the fact that Andrew Marsh is back there. And with all due respect to Samaj Morgan, I'm just so glad that we don't have to watch that anymore. And the kid, he's he busts his butt, and I understand that. But at some point, you've got to have,
Yeah, I mean, I would say the special teams, it's not that they don't have a special teams. It's that you can't not have a special teams. Special teams is either like pretty much positive or negative or neutral. And it's been negative like way too often this year. And you can't really max out as a team if you have bad special teams, because you either leave points on the board, you leave field position out there to be had, you turn the ball over, which has happened twice now on special teams this season. It's, it's a disaster in terms of like what you expect out of a Michigan special teams, especially because we've seen that be, one of those things that maybe doesn't get talked about enough, but it's the hidden yardage. It's the consistency from the field goal kicker position. And by the way, I haven't had too many concerns, even though Dominic Zavada's kind of had a weird year and he's missed some close field goals. In the big moments, I think we were talking about it in the press box before the game-winning kick during the timeout, and people were saying, what do you think is going to happen? Is he going to make it or not? I said, I think he's going to put it right through those 2 uprights, right into that student section. Turns out he kicked it, past those guys. He let a little anger out on that kick, I thought. But, so I think that Zavada is going to be fine. Luckily, you only had to use Hollenbeck once in this game. And, it was a punt that I think netted, was it 34 yards after a 7-yard return, something like that, or maybe 37 yards. But it was just a low line drive. It was a base hit at Wrigley, but it was just a low line drive. So you're not getting consistency there. The return game is a negative if it's not just a total zero. I think you got to take a long look at that, obviously, after the season. But for now, you just got to figure out what you can do to make sure it's not a negative going forward. Neutral would be fine. Andrew Marsh doesn't look fully comfortable back there yet, but I think he's definitely a better option than Samaj Morgan. You got to give Samaj credit for at least catching the ball this year outside of the one in the opener. And he lets too many bounce and all that. But Andrew Marsh, even on his return, he wasn't in great position. Actually, him moving forward kind of gave him a little bit of a head of steam there to pick up some yardage. But I think being it was a little bit windy there, obviously Chicago, but being in that position, and then he had one against Michigan State, maybe will give him a little more comfortability going forward. So maybe he breaks one. Maybe that's a big play in the Ohio State game or something like that. So we'll see.
And I'll just say last point on special teams, Samaj. I was just kind of sitting in the living room last night doing some magazine stuff after the Lions game, and the 11 o'clock news comes on, and all of a sudden I hear Samaj Morgan's voice. It's a feature story on him. It was a food drive where he's passing out turkeys and doing stuff in the community. I just want to say, I feel for the guy. He's a good young man, great family, but the results, you can separate that from what happens on the field. And it's been too much, and it's cost them too many times, whether it actually was a fumble or whether he actually recovered his fumble or not on Saturday. You just can't have it. So we'll see what that change. He did. It was a terrible call, awful call. But I know it doesn't, because these guys get paid now. I know it puts the criticism in a different lens because there's a little more, it's a little less taboo, I guess, to criticize a college guy. But I just want to say that that's on a really tough weekend. He woke up the next morning and did something out in the community. And I just wanted to give props and respect for that. We got a couple super chats here that I think will serve as a nice little segue into our next discussion. Ramez Herrick for $5 says, is there anything else to look for next weekend to prepare for Ohio State and hang our hat on other than just the weather?
Yeah, putting a full game together without turnovers, looking like they have once this year. What game was that, Anthony?
Believe it was when they played Central Michigan.
Your Central Michigan Chippewas, exactly. They put it all together.
Who are bowl eligible, by the way. So
exactly.
That win has aged very well.
It has aged extremely well. So that's what you're looking for at this point, right? You're looking for cleaning it up to the point where, okay, there aren't any turnovers. We're getting our yardage. We are getting the stops on defense. You're putting it all together, a full game where you're saying that looks like a really good, crisp football team that's ready to play its biggest game of the year. And I know that's cliche and probably not what you're looking for. We've seen a receiver emerge, Ramez, where, okay, now you're like, okay, we got something in the passing game that we didn't have here before with Andrew Marsh, who had the best performance by a true freshman receiver I've ever seen at Michigan and anybody's ever seen, frankly. I can't think of number two. Did you guys do a note for this by any chance for the site or the magazine, who number two might be in terms of true freshman performances?
Well, yardage wise, it's the most by a Michigan freshman since in history dating back to at least 1979.
Yeah. And there was nobody before that. I can promise you there was nobody before that, because that would have been the 1970s. Freshmen weren't eligible before 1973 or something like that. So, and I
don't know. I wasn't alive yet.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And in the Bo era, they were not going to have those guys that were catching a lot of passes. So, but unbelievable that they were that how good he is. I mean, he's not dropping any balls. The catch on the sidelines, it's funny. I tweeted, I said, that's a pro pass and a pro catch on the sidelines from Underwood to Andrew Marsh. And of course, you had some Buckeyes and Spartans saying that was one of the top 10 that I saw this weekend or something like that. Bullshit. It was an unbelievable grab. So now you're going to see teams probably scheme to try to take him out of the things. And maybe that opens some things up for Donovan McCulley and the tight ends. So, but I want to see a crisp game, Ramez, this weekend where everything goes right. They don't turn the ball over. And they look like the Michigan teams that we saw from 21 to 23 when it came to, okay, these guys are really looking like a together football team.
The Underwood to Marsh combo, just to talk about that for a second, Bryce Underwood throwing to Andrew Marsh is 37 of 45 on the season. That's an 82.2% completion percentage, 565 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 15.3 yards per pass attempt. It is elite right now. Maybe doesn't have quite the targets, 45, that some of the better combinations in the country have, but that's actually pretty high, especially considering he didn't become a starter until October. So I love that. They were feeding him early and often. Bryce Underwood seems to like to look his way. I know Sherrone Moore said today, partly that they felt like they could exploit some things in the past game, and then, things kind of went his way. But feels like Bryce really trusts him. He's had 0 drops all season long, according to PFF. And, really, I think that you found a staple in the passing game. Now, here's the thing is, okay, how much can you do in the passing game? And can opponents start to sit on the things that you do well, like we saw Northwestern do as the game went on? Bryce Underwood made a terrible read on his second interception. A run pass option, he has to hand that ball off 10 times out of 10. The safety, Robert Fitzgerald, is sitting right there on the slant route. So you got to have counters. If teams are going to sit on what you're doing well, to your point, Chris, like they're maybe going to try to take Marsh away, or they're going to try to take your best passing plays away, which were those slants in this game in the run pass option. He goes 7 of 10 on those, and it looked really good until it burns you at the end. So he's still learning, but can't make mistakes like that. But you have found some things that have worked here against a pretty solid defense in Northwestern. So coming out of the bye, I liked what I saw in that regard. As far as this weekend, real quick, just if it could look like the 2021 Michigan-Maryland game before the Ohio State game, where you really were clicking in all 3 phases. The special teams, you had a return for a touchdown, right? You put a bunch of different stuff on film. You're throwing it to Donovan Edwards. You gave Ohio State a lot to think about. The defense was good. I mean, that would be the ideal. But right now, the ideal is just win the game and get to the Ohio State game with hopefully some things you've been holding back and a raucous crowd behind you, and being one of the tougher tests and dragging them into the mud more than any team has this year. And see if you can eke out a win in that one, and then no one will care that you turned it over 5 times against Northwestern, or you struggled against Purdue and couldn't put Michigan State away until the end. All these things that we're kind of harping on now because they're relevant can become irrelevant if you beat Ohio State, and you have to beat Maryland first too.
Yeah, of course the goal is just win and stay healthy, because if they have a closer than expected win this weekend, it's going to be the same as the rest of them outside of the one, obviously. So that's what I want to see. I have a couple Andrew Marsh numbers here before we move on. Did write a story about him earlier today. He was obviously a big topic of discussion during the Monday press conference. So Andrew Marsh was a 4-star guy, number 157 overall player, and the number 22 wide receiver in the 2025 recruiting class. Through his first 10 games, Marsh has 37 catches for 565 yards and 2 touchdowns. And that is already, from a yardage perspective, more than Colston Loveland had last year. And in terms of wide receiver production, Samaj Morgan led the wide receivers last season with 27 catches. Tyler Morris led them in yards with 248. So he is, and that's obviously not the bar. That's not the standard, but you're looking at a guy who, it's not crazy to think he finishes the regular season with 50 catches and maybe close to 700-800 yards. And that's without really playing much in the first 4 games. That's very impressive. And the last thing from a numbers perspective, and I know this guy's been banged up a little bit, Takorian Moore at Oregon, 5-star guy, number 1 receiver in the class, has 28 catches for 443 yards and 3 touchdowns this year. Hasn't played since October, but it just kind of puts into perspective the impact that they are getting from a Marsh right now, which is absolutely huge.
I love it. I missed it. That elite receiver, and I think he's going to be that. It's too early to say that he is, guys, but you can see the ball skills. You can see that this kid is on his way. Those balls are humming. That ball that he caught on the sidelines, guys, was a game play. 3rd and 10, right? You're facing 4th and 10 with what, 1:50 to go or something like that,
What
guys?
would you have done if they didn't get it?
Oh, you go. I think you have to, don't you? Did they have 3 timeouts left?
They had 3 timeouts left.
Boy, that would have been tough. And they were at their 35. That's a great call. It's a great question. I think maybe they would have punted. Well, regardless, with that punter, maybe you go, doesn't matter. It's irrelevant, but that just goes to show you the fine line between winning and losing. I see some comments over here. Didn't Ballas predict 8 wins this year? No, I predicted 9, number one. So what's your beef? My beef is you needed a last-second field goal to beat a Northwestern team that had no business being in that game with you. People can say they're a good team. They're 5-5. They're just an okay team in the Big Ten that you should have put away earlier. I expected them to continue to improve throughout the year. With the injuries, I get it. Everybody has injuries, though. And on the offensive line, they've replaced a couple of guys who, frankly, are being outplayed by the guys that are in there now. The guys that are in there now, in my opinion, are better than the guys, or at least pretty damn comparable to the guys that they replaced. And in Jake Guarnera's situation, I think he's a much better option at right guard. So, the defense hasn't been all that banged up with the exception of Rod Moore. That's a big one. Obviously, hopefully they get him back for Ohio State. Somebody else asked about him over there. Is his season over? I think we could see him against Ohio State. So, but point taken on the injuries, but everybody's got them. It's one of those years. And, but yeah, you just want to see a little bit more, and you don't want to see a 5 turnover game ever. That should never be the case.
Another number on Andrew Marsh I'm looking at PFF, and you can filter by class, and among freshmen, he's second in the country with 37 receptions and second in the country with 565 receiving yards in his class. Malachi Toney of Miami, absolute dog, is higher in both of those categories, but that's it. And this was the 22nd best receiver in the country on a team that, maybe he was able to play earlier because you didn't have a ton of talent at receiver, but either way, he was going to earn a spot. This dude was ready, maybe not from game 1, but at least from game 3 or 4. So he's been a stud. They needed a difference maker to step up, and he's maybe not elite college receiver yet, but he's going to get there at some point, and you can see the flashes.
Yeah, and if they're able to find a guy who you can put on the outside as like a better version of what Donovan McCulley is giving them from a skill set perspective, guy that can win those jump balls down the field, contested catches, that's just going to make him all that more dangerous moving forward. So incredibly exciting, especially it feels like Michigan recruits like these 4-star guys in that like 150 to 200 range a lot. And a lot of times they've turned out to be okay, but it looks like they might have a legitimate star here. So that's a great find on their part and great get. So give credit where credit's due. Couple super chats here. Go Blue 982. He says, I don't care what OSU can beat them by, what the records are, or what the desert claims the spread is. I have PTSD from the old West Division teams.
I don't know what that means.
I don't really know either, but he paid his money. We love you, Go Blue.
PTSD from the old West Division teams.
I think what he's saying is this Michigan football team reminds him of a Big Ten West team, and I could totally see that.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe you can clarify 982 in the comments, and then we can comment a little bit better on that. But yeah, you know what? I go back. I'm gonna bring something up, guys. This is probably a little before your time. 1998, the year after the national championship team. They were terrible on offense. They had negative yards rushing against Minnesota. They were winning games 15-10. They looked like crap. And at the end of the year, they lost to Ohio State. And guess what? They were still co-Big Ten champions. So this team is not going to be a co-Big Ten champion, most likely. It's going to be tough for them to get to the championship game, even if they beat Ohio State. I think 2 things have to happen, right? USC has got to lose to Oregon, and then Oregon's got to lose at Washington. So it's not out of the question. Or Indiana's got to lose to Purdue, which probably isn't going to happen. So, but I really don't care. You beat Ohio State, you go 10-2. I think you're in the playoff. So, regardless, if they do that, if they win these next 2 games, nobody's going to give a damn what it looked like against Purdue or Northwestern or any of that stuff. What they're going to remember is that you beat Ohio State. You had 1 loss in the Big Ten. Granted, a lot of that was on the schedule. If you look at the schedule, it's lined up really nicely this year. Wisconsin sucked. Right. You got Washington at home. Otherwise, that's a possible loss out there on the coast. So Michigan State was god awful. That's sometimes a really tough game. And even so, that was a 4th quarter game, guys. If they make a play or 2 down the stretch, that's a 1-score game with Michigan having the ball with like 5 minutes to go. So regardless, you play who's in front of you. That's what people are saying about Ohio State too. Who have they really played? They've been methodical and dominating teams. So look at their schedule. It's certainly not a gauntlet. You would expect them to win every game on that schedule, with the exception of, I think Washington was a solid win for them. But yeah, it's all coming down to that one game, guys. Just get by Maryland, fellas. And then if they win that Ohio State game, I couldn't care less what happens after that.
Can I be honest about their schedule?
Mm-hmm.
Can we bring that Ohio State back up for a second? I think there's and again, the Texas game, probably a bit of a coin flip, but there's a non-zero chance that Michigan darn near wins every game on that schedule before the last game of the year.
Yeah.
So it again, I'm not disparaging them. They're a good football team. They're a very good football team. I think they're the most complete football team in the country. But yeah, the schedule is what it is. I wanted to go through, just while it was on our minds, the Big Ten tiebreakers. A simple way to put it for Michigan is that you need to beat Maryland, beat Ohio State, and whoever wins the USC or USC Oregon game this weekend, which is huge, that team will need to take an additional loss. But as a very prominent Michigan fan, or whatever you'd like to refer to him as, quote tweeted earlier today, he said, "I don't care about the Big Ten title game. Beat Ohio, and we're 10-2 and in the playoffs. Rest up after that to go win the Natty." That was Dave Portnoy who quoted my story on the Big Ten scenarios today. So
Fox analyst.
That was interesting.
He had a great rant. He had a great rant over the weekend, I saw.
Fox analyst. We saw him at Joe's Seafood on Friday night. So
yeah. What was that rant, Clay? What did he say?
Well, he was just talking about the scathing, allegations that came out, or not allegations, the ruling that came out from the NCAA last week about a Big Ten institution and their cheating and recruiting and everything else. So it was, you kind of start to think like drip, drip, drip. Here comes more on what Michigan State did on the recruiting trail. It was damning.
And who was that? What school was that, Clay?
Michigan State, the Spartans.
Right.
Yeah.
The
land grant institution. Yeah.
There you have it.
Well, there it is. There it is.
Kind of irrelevant.
He has spoken.
Yep.
So I feel the same way about it. By the way, I think we've been pretty upfront about this is a television program that the College Football Playoff Committee will create. If they'll be able to justify a 10-win Michigan team in there, but I think they're probably a little bit safer if you don't have that extra data point with the Big Ten championship game. So we'll see about that. I know what the scenarios are, but it's hard for me to say college football playoff because I haven't seen that gear from this team yet. So,
yep.
Zion Schaub for $5. Is it just me, or do the players seem more unhappy with squeaking out wins against bad teams than more? You guys are in the post-game press conferences more than I am. And does it seem like the players are bummed out against the wins?
Not really. And on top of that, what is he going to say? He can say, yes, you got to keep it positive. And when you talk about your players, and this is what I liked about Jim Harbaugh and why his players loved him, why Sherrone's players love him, is you can't just rip on your guys in the post game and say, he's terrible, he sucks, he's got to do better. So you can say, yeah, he made some mistakes, but I thought he balanced it perfectly when it came to Bryce Underwood. Like, yeah, he's going to want some back, but I hope that people will understand some of the steps forward he made today too, is what he said. So I think he handles it fine. I think behind closed doors, he understands and he knows the shortcomings. I think you're going to see some, for example, at the end of the year, you're going to see some changes on his staff. I have no doubt about that, and things that need to get better. So, but it doesn't do any good to come out publicly and say, hey, these kids suck, we suck, and you know what, there's no way we're going to do anything. You got to keep it positive because you're still dealing with guys that are 18 to 22 years old.
The players seem to have kind of the perfect demeanor after the game. You can kind of see it if you're watching on the YouTube version here. There's no audio, but like they're excited about the win. I mean, Bryson Cusdall was smiling, when he was talking about his runs, and I asked him about, is your phone blowing up yet? And he said, yeah, he'll check it on the plane and all these things. But they also understand. Then you ask about a pick or you ask about the fumble on the handoff exchange, and they understand there's a lot that needs to get better. And yeah, what's Sherrone Moore going to do, especially because he's under the microscope and it's his program, and he has to talk about how they are winning games, 4 in a row now, despite how it's looked. And he's making sure to point out, it seems like in every press conference, how many freshmen they're playing and redshirt freshmen. He's even said some guys that are true sophomores. He's even called them redshirt freshmen. But like he has to kind of do that to a certain extent to get his message out there. So it just kind of is what it is. But no, I don't see that the players are more bummed than him. I think he understands that, they should have won that game more comfortably. But also he's going to get up there and say, hey, how about Dom Zavada? And how about the plays that Bryce Underwood did make and all that?
Right.
So you have to be able to compartmentalize those things, I think.
Yep. And Zion says over here, I don't want him to rip his players. By the way, I want him to take accountability for poor coaching. And I understand that too. At the same time, what are you going to do? You aren't going to throw your guys under the bus. I agree with you 100% that there are some coaching deficiencies, and I think everybody knows it. Everybody has seen it, except for the sunshine pumpers, as they're called. Oh, everything's glorious because we're 8-2 type of thing. No, it's not. But I think there will be accountability. I think we saw it last year when he made some changes on his staff. He brought some people in to help. But during the year, you need these guys to circle the wagons. You can't sit there and throw these guys under the bus and then say on Monday, okay, now do your job. I just ripped you in the media. Go out there, and keep a brave face and now your kids might think less of you. So I don't really have an issue with it. And I think it's being handled pretty well, frankly.
And also, I just don't think you're going to have, in 7 of your 8 wins where they're closer than the spread would be or whatever it is. I just don't think you're going to have a head coach coming to the podium and saying, I didn't have him ready to play today. Well, You won the game. So I think fans a lot.
296 yards of offense. They did a lot of good things, right, AB?
Yeah, they did. And it's your job to parse through that and see what's real and what needs to be cleaned up. And, the win doesn't, and they don't feel this way. The win doesn't exonerate everything else that happened. But, I think they keep a lot of that stuff in house. And I want to say, as we transition into, we'll probably go really quick on Monday press conferences, but we talked to Trey Williams today, and something, I forget what the question was, but a question came up about how did you, he spoke about the team's togetherness, and there was a point this season where he really felt it, and he was asked what that was, and he said it was after the USC game, where there are a lot of teams in the country, and one very prominent one. You look at Penn State, they lost one game to a very good team in overtime, and their season completely fell apart. Their coach got fired. He just got a new job, by the way, James Franklin to Virginia Tech. You've seen a lot of schools lose a couple games, and all of a sudden coaches get fired. The team falls apart. Trey Williams said that the way that they've responded since then, the way there's no fractures in the locker room, there's not infighting. There's still a togetherness here. And I think for as many questions as there are about Sherrone Moore or how good this staff is, how good this team is, how good can they be, I don't have a lot of questions about, are the players bought in? There's still a lot to clean up. And I think there is a self-awareness about it behind the scenes. But in the here and now, I don't think you can fix many of the things that ail them. In fact, I think most of the things that ail them, I don't think you can fix until this season is over, even if you do rally these next few weeks, make the playoff and take that however far it goes. So I think there's an awareness about that. I mean, the vibes were great after you beat Ohio State, and less than 48 hours later, Kirk Campbell was fired and you were in the market for a new OC. Like that's when it's a very small sample size, but when there's a clear deficiency, I think we've seen Sherrone kind of act with some conviction on it. So I'll give him that.
Yep, there's a time and a place for it. There's no doubt about it. We actually had a clown, I don't remember if it was on Twitter or the message board or what, who said, why don't you mods show some balls and stand up?
No, that's every week now.
I know, but show some balls and ask Sherrone why he is failing this team and why he sucks so bad and how he deserves to have a job here and blah, 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 blah. And you aren't living in reality, buddy. If you think that's what press conferences are like, if you want to make a complete ass of yourself, we'll invite you and you can be a reporter, junior reporter for a day. You go ahead and ask that question and see how it's received. So there are ways to ask those questions about, okay, why are the special teams bad week after week? And what are you going to do about it without saying, hey, it's clear JB Brown sucks. When are you going to fire him? We would never do that. Right. Or what a stupid call you made on the reverse, you dumbass. And how do you still have a job? We're not going to ask those tough questions, but there are questions that we can ask. We do ask them. Reporters in that room ask them every week. So maybe we will have a raffle at some point for these guys that want to ask the really tough questions and get you up there. We'll see what happens here in the next few weeks.
Any thoughts on that, Clayton? You have any applicants or interns that might want to apply?
Neff?
No, I mean,
No,
I
don't do that.
Well, I mean, then I'm just thinking of Dusty today. Got asked a question, with a guy saying, or not, it wasn't even a question that. So maybe the tough questions are getting asked at basketball, but the guy flat out told Dusty, "You're going to have trouble with San Diego State's defense." So I thought that was funny. So sometimes they get asked.
Yeah, can you play Yaxel Lundeborg because your guards suck in San Diego State? Is basically how the schedule is. How the question read to him, right? Your guards.
Yeah, he did not like it.
He did not like it. He goes, I don't understand your question. Will we play Axel more? Yes. And setting up offense? Absolutely. So that was funny. By the way, Dusty May is an absolute stud. It's funny listening to people rip him in game threads. This guy has an answer. And every time we ask a question, he has a specific response where you learn something about basketball the way you did when John Beeline was here. Not so much Juwan Howard, with all due respect, and maybe that was just Juwan's style. But Dusty May is a basketball savant. This team's going to continue to improve. Maybe this is a nice segue into basketball, guys, because we got about 10 minutes left here. But
well, I really quick just wanted to, because we went super long and I didn't get to press conference stuff. Injury updates: Jordan Marshall's day to day. Justice Haynes, not a guy that Sherrone was ready to say is out for the year. More comfortable saying he's probably out for the regular season. Take that for what it's worth. The guy had foot surgery. It's not that difficult to figure out. Zach Marshall banged up, but should be good to go. And I think that's it by way of injuries. Is there anything else you guys took away from Sherrone today?
Hogan Hansen and Rod Moore, we'll see, right? We're going to wait and see. It wouldn't surprise me if they held them both out until Ohio State, and we saw them. That would be their fourth game of the year, both, right? So that would be very interesting. So what they would do with them after that, if Rod Moore might consider coming back for a sixth year. So I wanted to say on Jordan Marshall that it was a shoulder. I confirmed that with Sherrone, and he said the x-rays were negative. Last year, Kalel Mullings, and speaking to people close to him, he played the Ohio State game with a separated shoulder, and then later in the game, a high ankle sprain. So I think it's a pain thing when it comes to shoulders, and the fact that the x-rays were negative, I think is pretty encouraging. Sherrone did say he's pretty confident that he'd play against Ohio State, but we'll see. I think it would take maybe not an act of God, but it would take a hell of a lot to keep Jordan Marshall off the field when Ohio State comes to town.
He's not missing the Ohio State game unless there was something broken, and there's not. So, but x-rays negative doesn't mean there's not an injury. So,
right.
We'll see. I guess I just use his "we'll see," but it's still not a great situation, I think. And there have been times in the past when he's been super positive after games, like, oh, this guy could have come back in, and then you don't see him the next week. It's like, well, what happened? I mean, I understand. I'll take any info we can get, I guess, but it seems like, there are times when it doesn't always line up. And part of it, it's a moving target, when you're have to go get treatment and everything. So these guys are doing everything they can. Jordan Marshall, especially so. I mean, there's not a guy out there that's more of a warrior on this team than Jordan Marshall. So yeah, I hope we can see him for the Maryland game, because you need everybody. Things can get weird when you got a bunch of, backups in and you're on the road and everything. Would love to see him out there, but at least Ohio State, he's got to be out there, and he definitely will be.
Rapid fire. Moving to Dusty May, his press conference on Monday. Of course, Michigan is 3-0. They get a nice come from behind win, not a pretty one, but a road win on Friday night at TCU. They moved to 3-0. They'll play Middle Tennessee State on Wednesday at Chrysler Center. Hopefully you guys will come out for that. Need to get that place a little more full than it was for the opener, but takeaways from what Dusty May had to say today.
Like I said, I love how he answers every question. I asked him about double teams with Adai Mara, and he goes, well, there were 5, 3 led to good shots, 2 were turnovers. And then he goes into detail about how they want to play 4-on-3 and break it down, get the ball out quickly, what we can do to help him. Then specifics about what he can do with footwork to help himself. And I'm thinking, I couldn't have gotten a better answer to my question. He knows what his team's deficiencies are. You got to understand that they are just still putting these pieces together to the point where they had injuries where guys weren't even practicing together until a couple weeks ago. So there's still a lot to be determined here in terms of what they're going to do and their best 5. He mentioned, this is our best 5 on offense, but they're not necessarily our best 5 on defense. So we're still going to tinker with lineups. He did acknowledge that they will probably have different starting lineups to see what works, but I have zero doubt that this team's going to continue to improve. The guard play is going to be big. Elliot Cadeau has got to be better, but he did come out and say, hey, he's a big reason that we won those first 2 games as well, and he played pretty well in the exhibition game, exhibition season a couple times too. So the guy knows what he's doing. The fact that they're 3-0, but it wasn't beautiful, is fine with me, because how many times did we see it in the Beeline era, guys, where he was figuring things out in November, December, even January, and then they peaked in February, March, maybe even once in April or twice in April. So I have complete confidence in this guy.
It's so early, and even when it comes to Elliot Cadeau, because nobody has played well in every game. In fact, some guys have had some really rough games, including Cadeau and Mara, who combined for 11 turnovers to 2 assists in the TCU game. But Elliot Cadeau, counting the 2 exhibitions and then the 3 regular season games, he played really well in 4 or 5 games. I mean, there were ups and downs, and especially Wake Forest, but I thought he's been good overall. I'm not too worried about him, and I think that him and everyone else is just going to get more comfortable. And to think that this roster that was put together with a lot of new guys out there was just going to come together right out of the gate and play really well, maybe that was not super realistic, although, you make some shots against Wake Forest, you win comfortably. And the TCU game, if you don't turn it over on a third of your possessions, maybe you win comfortably as well. So there are definitely some areas, but, they still are winning. My biggest takeaway was just they're still in the experimental phase in a lot of different ways, and you kind of alluded to it there. But here's their most common lineup this year. Elliot Cadeau, Namari Burnett, Yaxel Lendeborg, Merez Johnson, and Adai Mar. That's their most common 5. And they've played 12 minutes together. Their second most common is LJ Kaysen, Trey McKinney, Roddy Gale, Will Cheddar, Adai Mara. They played 11 minutes. Everyone was ripping on Yaxel Lendeborg during the Wake Forest game. I mean, he's still recovering from a hand injury, and he played basically with one hand in the opener. He's played 2 games at close to full health. It is super early. And yeah, the 3 big lineup, I mean, they turned it over on over half their possessions against TCU when those 3 guys were in the game at the same time. And they really struggled on offense, but on defense, they allowed 35.9 points per 100 possessions. If you extrapolate that out, which would rank in the 100th percentile in the country. So it's elite. It's as good as it gets. And he kind of talked about that today. And this is the lineup he was talking about. He didn't name it, but the numbers line up so closely. But basically, if you have, I forget the exact number he had, but, a 45 defensive rating and an 85 defensive or offensive rating, you have an elite spread there on 40, points per 100 possession difference with the net rating. Yet it can look really ugly on offense, but if it's elite on defense, it might be worth it for stretches. So they just got to figure out how to get that lineup with the offense a little bit better or quite a bit better, and it probably can. And then on defense, it might be shut down. So I wouldn't give up on that yet. Although, you do see a ton of clunkiness with that lineup. I did like when they went smaller against TCU, especially a team like that, when you had Trey McKinney come in the game. So it's interesting. It's fun to follow because they've got a lot of different options and they're trying different things. But it'll be interesting to see how it goes. You got Middle Tennessee and then some big boy games next week, starting with San Diego State.
Yeah, for me, it's just early evaluation incomplete. We'll check in after Vegas and see how it looks. And I think we'll have a much better idea of where this team's headed, what needs to improve. I think we'll move into questions now. We're a little short on time, but I have another super chat from Go Blue 982. He says, beating OSU covers a multitude of sins. So just win out and all will be right in the world until IU wins the Big Ten, and then the cosmos will explode.
Let them explode. Good for them. Kurt Cignetti's a great coach. It'll be fun to see somebody different than Ohio State if they do, in fact, play Ohio State and beat them. I'm not conceding that Michigan's going to lose. Even if there's a 1-5 or a 1-4 chance that Michigan beats Ohio State at home, or 1-3, that's the roll of the dice still. It's just your odds aren't quite as good. And again, Ryan Day, there's the Ryan Day factor. So, yep, I think I couldn't care less. If IU won it, I would be very happy for them.
I don't know if you saw the reports today that it's been a different Ryan Day since the Michigan loss last year. So no chance Michigan wins this game.
Not a chance. There was a guy that also commented on the Big Ten scenario story I did. It was an Ohio State fan. And he's like, are you really wanting to look at what it looks like to play IU? And my reply to him was, do you?
Right. Good point. Yeah.
We'll see. Question from the message board. This is from, sorry, I scrolled down. Asaker Jen, who says, question to discuss or answer if you guys know. Sherrone Moore gets criticized for clock management, end of half strategies, play calls when time is a factor, etc. The question is, does he get real-time help on these decisions from coaches and analysts upstairs? If so, is that something those people formally meet about to talk scenarios and how info, suggestions, and recommendations are passed to him? Wink and Chip Lindsay. So I think a too long didn't read version of that would simply to be, does he have a clock guy? And are there analytics people he's talking to throughout the game? He says yes. I don't know what that infrastructure looks like, but maybe you guys have some light to shed on it.
I think it's one of his staffers. I do. And who's been around for a while. I don't want to mention who, because people will rip on him probably. Right. So, but I do think he has a staffer. In fact, I'm sure of it. And I still think they need to do a better job. Somebody did ask him about the timeout he called with 54 seconds left, which didn't make a whole hell of a lot of sense. Even his response today didn't make a lot of sense. So still a little bit of work there to do there, fellas.
Yeah, he said he wanted time to figure out what the best runs were. I mean, man, you got some time when, in between plays, you got to do it. But, they were able to pick up the first down a couple plays later anyway. So, yeah, he does have somebody. I guess I was going to name him, but maybe I won't now. What's that?
You can if you're positive it's him.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think he gets the input, but you got to be ready, and the coaches are making these decisions on the fly, like around the country. And you see some bad decisions across college football. You see some better decisions in the NFL, but still some questionable ones. So, it just kind of is what it is. He's a learning coach, first time as a head coach and second year. But yeah, I mean, I think it comes down to the coach. Like, other people make recommendations, but he's the one managing this. It's his program. So it comes down to him.
And Lloyd Carr is a Hall of Fame coach, and I will never forget when they spiked the ball on fourth down, or they knelt on it on fourth down in their own territory to give Colorado one last shot at a Hail Mary. The second time, a second Hail Mary from like 27 yards. And I'm thinking, you want to talk about bad clock management. It doesn't get any worse than that. It happens to a lot of people. Guys learn, but they do need an analytics guy and a guy there to be on the ball at all times to tell them what the hell to do, because that should not happen.
Yeah, I mean, bad decisions in football games happen all the time. I watched an alleged star wide receiver on my football team mount a goalpost last night, cost his team points. So
that was fun.
Stupid stuff happens all the time in the game of football. Super chat from Shane Johnson for $9.99. Concerns with hoops, flashback to last year with the turnover issues and lack of outside shooting, 90th in 3-point shooting. And this is why I was grumpy about the football team, because Shane just had to bring it up. He says, AB, Dan decision-making in golf was 7-25 with second half passing, which is the worst percentage for any QB in a second half since 15. Thank you. I didn't just go to bed last night. I have to hear about it today too and be upset too.
Yeah, that sucked. It was not a fun game to watch. It was windy. I don't give a damn. It was terrible. He missed a lot of receivers. His worst game, I think, in a Lions uniform. And for darn it, kick some field goals.
Dang it.
God darn it, kick some field goals every now and then. Take the points.
Fiddlesticks.
You do that, and you might win that football game. So I'm not talking about a 48-yarder. I'm talking about some chip shots. Even with that wind, you probably win that football game. So it's one thing to have the big balls. It's another thing to be a little bit responsible. As far as hoops, maybe a little bit. It's way too early, Shane, to panic. Turnover issues, I get it. They actually weren't that terrible in I think the Wake Forest game, if I'm not mistaken, or was it and as far as the outside shooting, 19 point, was it Wake Forest? Did they have 22 turnovers or
17? It was 22. Okay. It's still bad, but
yeah, it's not good. But then as far as 3-point shooting, they had 19 triples against against Oakland. You know, they had some wide open looks. They've got guys that can make shots. I think they're going to be okay. I don't think they're going to be nearly as bad in either area this year, Shane. Again, just 3 games, and they haven't played a whole lot together.
Too small of a sample for the shooting. Like that game was going to happen. You're going to go 4 of 27 or whatever it was, 4 of 25, whatever it was. In a season, it just so happened to come the game after you made 19. So then you feel like maybe that was fool's gold, but we just need more data on that. The turnovers does feel similar a little bit the last year, especially the dumb ones. And, you know, but at the same time, the TCU game, that's the highest turnover rate Michigan has had in the Dusty May era. So it was even worse than the games last year. The good thing is, Shane, and appreciate you, Shane. Thanks for, I feel like we haven't got a Shane Johnson comment in a while. The good thing is Dusty May's teams are 15-4 in games decided by 4 points or fewer or in overtime. So, I mean, yeah, they're coin flips at a certain point, and maybe they'll come back to bite them and they'll regress to the mean at some point. But they continue to win. That's what feels similar to last year in a different way, which is an overwhelming positive. And with the football team and the basketball team, it's all that really matters in the end.
Yeah, we did the math in terms of talk about weird TCU adjacent things this week. And obviously Michigan basketball plays down there. Michigan's offense has the most yards against a Power 4 opponent since it played TCU in the college football playoff. We extrapolated the turnovers from Saturday's football game. They had 5 and 12 possessions to if it was a basketball game in the same set of circumstances that Michigan played Friday night, where it had, I think, 70 possessions, 22 turnovers. That was the equivalent of having 29 turnovers in a game and still winning. So I don't know where Chris is. I think we lost him, but that's a good time to get out of here. Guys, be sure to like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel for more content from the Wolverine, whether it's us, basketball, recruiting, it's all there for you. So take advantage of that. Thank you to our sponsor, Homefield. Thank you to producer Megan and the junior producer today behind the scenes, to Chris Ballas, Clayton Safey. I'm Anthony Broom. Thanks, guys, for watching. We'll talk to you again next week.